Hey everyone, this is Adina from Immigrant Finance. I wanted to come and speak about what the recent DACA decision from the Texas District Court means and how you can still be financially empowered regardless of that decision, regardless of whether or not we have DACA. What are steps you can be doing right now to be putting yourself in a more powerful position? So just to get started, there was a decision on Friday, June 16th, 2021, from a federal district court judge in Texas who ruled that the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program, is unlawful, but he allowed the program to continue for current recipients. Now, first of all, for those of you who are unfamiliar with DACA, what is DACA? So DACA is a program that was started by the Obama administration that essentially gives work permits and the ability to have a temporary relief from any potential deportation for individuals who have been brought to the U.S. as children and who meet certain requirements, for example, educational requirements, being in school, and things like that. Now, the DACA program has been under attack now for so many years from the Republicans. There's been so much uncertainty with it. The people who have been impacted by this program, who've been able to get DACA, or the people who were excluded from this program, have all faced so much uncertainty and stress and anxiety about this program. And I know many of you in this community who I speak with are DACA recipients, or you have been excluded from DACA because you missed the cutoff by a certain amount or something like that. As an immigration lawyer, I've also personally represented many DACA holders, people who have lost DACA, people who are never eligible for DACA. And I have several friends who are DACA holders and who are cut off. So this issue really hits close to home, and my heart has just been broken and aching knowing that so many of you must just feel that this is yet another setback you have to go through when there have been far too many already, and it is exhausting. So I'm so sorry that this is happening yet again, and there's still so much uncertainty about this program. It's just really why we need a permanent path to citizenship, permanent relief through legislation for the immigrant community. So let's talk about, first of all, what are some of the economic contributions of people with DACA? Because this is the Immigrant Finance platform, we're obviously looking at all things immigration and immigration law in terms of finances as well. And I thought it'd be important to point out, for those of you who aren't aware, how much DACA recipients are really contributing to the U.S. economy and how financially powerful they are. So just in 2017, the New American Economy found that DACA recipients had paid over $4 billion in taxes. And in 2020, that number went up. The Center for American Progress found that DACA recipients and their households pay over $5.6 billion in federal taxes, and over $3.1 billion of that has been in state and local taxes each year. After that, DACA recipients and their households have a combined $24 billion in spending power that they put back into their communities and local economies. More than 200,000 DACA recipients work on the front lines of the pandemic response, and over 56,000 DACA recipients own homes, making an annual $566.9 million in mortgage payments. Other DACA recipients who rent pay over $2.3 billion in rental payments each year alone. So this community is contributing significantly. The numbers don't lie, and I don't believe can be debated how much this community is contributing and how financially powerful they really are. And that needs to be taken very seriously. Now let's talk about what this decision means from the district court in Texas. Now, the ruling from Judge Hannon permits current DACA recipients to continue maintaining their DACA and to renew their DACA status. However, it does not allow for any new applications to be granted. So that is the big change for people who never had DACA, who are currently applying and haven't been approved, or who are going to apply, that they are not going to be able to at this moment after that decision until another decision hopefully changes that. But people who do have DACA will continue essentially in the status quo of being able to maintain their DACA and renew it. Although it doesn't change things for current DACA holders, I know this brings so much uncertainty and fear for the program being questioned itself. The judge did find that the program is unlawful. And this decision to not accept new DACA applicants and just the painful uncertainty it brings, that it prolongs for current DACA holders is wrong. It's unjust and it's dehumanizing, and it will be challenged on appeal. Immigrants and their families should not have to face this added layer of trauma, stress, and uncertainty. And I think we're all sick of seeing the DACA community and recipients being treated as political bargaining chips by the Republicans. These are precious human lives at stake, and this country needs to see these individuals and treat these individuals with dignity and have their human rights respected and provide them the ability to permanently be able to legally work and have citizenship and maintain their obvious contributions to this country and their ability to stay with their families. This country really needs to pass permanent immigration reform. Now let's talk about what that decision was for current DACA holders to maintain their status and why that's the case. So this essentially comes from a fundamental concept in the law under the principle of due process, which is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, regarding people's reliance interests. So when a policy or law is found unlawful, it is often found to be unlawful going forward from that decision on instead of backward if there were reliance interests, which essentially means, all of these in this case, all of these people who have had DACA for years, who've been working on their work permits through DACA and had their social security numbers through it, they have relied on this program and it has deeply affected their lives. And even in this decision from this Republican-appointed judge finding the DACA policy unlawful, even that judge recognized those reliance interests. So that is a very positive thing from this decision and why the judge did not make a decision taking away DACA for current holders, because he recognized that due process reliance interest the individuals have had, prior to that decision. So essentially, it's referred to as the decision would not be applied retroactively to people who previously received the DACA benefit. I want to also point out the context of this decision. Now, I know it's a federal court and that sounds important, but this is from a federal district court, which is the lowest level court in the federal litigation system. This decision is certainly going to be brought on appeal. It's going to go before other courts, including likely the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Now, I know we cannot rely on those courts to fix this, particularly the Fifth Circuit is known as a conservative court, and the Supreme Court has not been favorable to immigrants' rights or to the rights of people of color. We cannot hold our breath waiting for that. We need to continue fighting for a legislative path to citizenship. But I do just want to point out anything can happen. And things can very much change in different decisions. This is by no means a final decision. It's just a decision from that court right now. And in my work as an immigration lawyer, I specifically work on appeals in the federal court system. So I can say that, knowing in my own cases that happens all the time. Unpredictable things can happen. Cases can move out. The parties in the case can change their mind, right? Real life can happen through advocacy and organizers that change public opinion, right? So this is just the decision for right now. And like I said, current DACA holders or people who've already had their DACA approved before the decision will maintain their status. I want to read a couple quotes from folks at MALDEF, which is a nonprofit organization representing DACA recipients in the case. So first, a quote from the president and general counsel of MALDEF, Thomas Sands. He says, "This case should never have been filed, and it should never have progressed beyond its filing. Current DACA recipients remain fully protected, but the decision threatens hundreds of thousands of others who should also be protected as they continue to contribute to the betterment of our nation. The decision was plainly determined by the judge's views of many years ago, and the decision fails to reconcile important recent developments in the law of standing and of presidential authority. It therefore presents numerous grounds for potentially successful appeal." Here's a quote from the MALDEF Vice President of Litigation, Nina Perales. She says that Judge Hannon ruled that DACA will continue for current recipients, and he took special note of DACA recipients' reliance for almost a decade on this policy. Those are those reliance interests I was talking about. It's now up to Congress to enact comprehensive immigration reform so that Dreamers can continue to build their lives in the U.S. So really pointing to how we need a legislative fix here. We cannot rely on the courts. So what we need, the DACA program is not enough. We need a pathway to citizenship. And right now, Congress is examining the current budget reconciliation process as a new innovative way to potentially pass a legalization bill for this year that would provide an expedited and fully inclusive path to citizenship for the broadest possible population of immigrants, including all DACA eligible youth, temporary protected status holders, farm workers, and other essential workers. We look to members of Congress to ensure that no one is left behind. We need to make sure that this is passed, and this is definitely something you can do, is to call up your representatives and encourage them to pass immigration reform during the budget reconciliation process. Now, I want to talk about 3 things you can do to be financially powerful with or without DACA, regardless of what the immigration laws say and regardless of your immigration status. There are 3 things you can do in terms of your finances to be financially strong and have more options. The first is to learn how to manage money and to strengthen your money mindset. When it comes to learning how to managing money, you can have savings, you can have emergency fund, you can have budget that all prepare you for anything that can give you control and power in a time when there's so much uncertainty. One example of how this is helpful is for being able to pay for an immigration lawyer if you ever need one. So in the immigration system, unlike the criminal system where there's public defenders for people who can't afford private lawyers, there is no public defender in immigration court. So most people are unrepresented unless they can afford a private immigration attorney. And immigration attorneys are known to be very expensive, particularly a good one. It could be more than $10,000 for a case, for example, right? And people are 10 times more likely to win their case if they do have an immigration lawyer. So by learning to manage money and having savings and being prepared for emergencies through building your savings and learning how to know where every dollar is going, you could have a lot more options and choices if anything comes up. For example, being able to pay for a good immigration lawyer. It's also going to give you more stability for anything that comes up. You'll be able to respond from making better decisions instead of having to be so reactive. If you have savings you can use, if you know how to manage your money and budget. Money mindset's also incredibly important because with a strong relationship with money, you can really do anything. You can set goals and make them happen, right? You can make smarter, less emotional financial decisions that give you more options and choices. You can be more aware of the opportunities that you have available, and you could have more financial stability and build more wealth. So these are all incredibly important things you can do with your finances to put yourself in a better position regardless of what happens. The second thing you can do to be financially strong and powerful regardless of DACA is to start investing in the stock market, or investing in yourself, or investing in real estate, or investing in starting a business. Whatever form of investment works for you, works. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is and picking one so that you can be growing and building wealth and expanding and having your money grow for you, right? And instead of just having it sit in a bank account. In a bank account in cash, your money actually loses value. It loses 3% of value every year because of inflation. Whereas if your money is invested, for example, in the stock market, it's going to be growing exponentially and building wealth so that you can be more financially stable and prepared and abundant when it comes to retirement, when it comes to your children's future, when it comes to supporting other family members. And there's a big misconception that you have to be a citizen in order to invest. That's simply not true. You don't need to be a citizen, and you don't even need to have DACA to invest. What you need is something called an individual tax identification number, which is an alternative form of identification number if you don't have a social security number. Despite, except for limited exceptions, anyone with an ITIN should be able to get started investing and growing their money and building wealth. This is how you can protect your future and be in a better position to have more options and grow your money so that it has more value. The third thing that you can do to be more financially strong and powerful, with or without DACA, is to consider starting a business. Now, a business is one of the best ways to be increasing income. If you look at people who are wealthy, who are financially successful, they almost always have a business, or at least real estate investments or something like that, because it's very difficult in a 9-to-5 job working for a single employer to make enough income to really grow your money to build wealth. And starting a business is something you can do regardless of your status. You don't need a work permit. You don't need DACA to start a business. That's why there's millions of undocumented immigrants out there who have their own businesses, who are financially secure because of that, and have options for their families regardless of what the immigration laws say. They're also contributing significantly to this country and to paying taxes and all of that. In particular, online businesses are a great way for immigrants to be learning how to generate more income and have more options because they can be operated from anywhere in the world. So if you have to go back home or be in another country, having an online business is a very viable strategy for you to have financial stability. Now, a few next steps you can do. The first thing is to please consider donating to MALDEF, the organization that's representing DACA recipients in the Texas lawsuit, and to United We Dream, which has been leading organizing for Dreamers for years. You can text United We Dream, text them DACA call to 877-877 to get ongoing updates about what's going on with DACA, and to get mental health resources during this difficult time. On DocuHealth resources, you can text them UHealth to 877-877. Another thing you can do is call your representatives in Congress and urge them to pass immigration reform. Urge them to provide a path to citizenship in the budget reconciliation legislation, and ensure that the broadest group of immigrants possible are protected, including DACA holders, temporary protected status holders, essential workers, farm workers. Everybody needs to be part of immigration reform. And then finally, remember that regardless of what the immigration laws say, regardless of what happens with DACA, you have a right to be financially empowered and strong. This is your birthright. No one can take that away from you. And you deserve to have the life you deserve and have more options and choices. And through finances, that's a way where you can build your own stability, right, and empowerment regardless of what the laws say.